Hi everyone and welcome to this episode of Imminent Marketing. Today I am talking to Iain Jacob, the former Chief Executive of Starcom MediaVest and Publicis Media EMEA, amongst many other things. Iain has a bundle of insight into the ad agency world and marketing in general, and we dive into a lot of conversations around marketing, brand, creativity, and what brands should be doing and thinking about as they move forward over the next few years. So enjoy this conversation with Iain Jacob.
Are you a pilot?
Am I a pilot?
Yeah. So I looked at your Twitter account, right, and there's a big picture of you, sort of looks like you're flying some sort of 747s.
Yes, well, I did pretend to be a pilot for a short while, but I've never actually flown a plane.
Okay. So what was that? Was that a...
I asked the captain to move to one side because he invited children up to the flight deck, and I queued up.
Oh, very nice.
And flew the plane.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
I took my youngest son once to a what do you call it? A flight simulator, like a proper 747.
Yeah.
And he basically flew a 747 through the Swiss Alps. It was very fancy doing it.
Well, I've done a bit of flight sim and I've crashed planes before, so
exactly.
you know.
That's the best to do it, I think, in a simulator.
I'm no longer a professional pilot, is
Right,
what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Anyway, so thanks for coming in. I wanted to jump into like a number of questions around, obviously, your field of expertise. Obviously, spent a lot of time working in the sort of ad land, let's say, so to speak, and now you're, I guess, looking from the outside in. But my first question really was around, we work a lot with brands directly, and given what's sort of going on within the ad space, if you were dropped into some big brand and said, right, we need to start, pushing this product, service, whatever, how would you start thinking about that?
Yeah, well, I think it goes beyond advertising for the brands. And what you're seeing today clearly is a massive digital disruption to brands and the environments they're working in. And although there's a lot of jargon around that, it basically means two things. As a brand nowadays, you've got to be utterly consumer-centric. So you've got to have a good understanding of who your customers are in granular detail. And then you've got to be able to engage them effectively in new product propositions, advertising, communication, whatever. Which put into English means you need a data strategy for a brand to understand your customers, and you need an engagement strategy. So that sounds simple, but it's highly disruptive for brands that have traditionally been on broadcast, if you will, used to a standard retail environment. That whole world is changing fast.
So where do you start? You say you need a data strategy. So like where do you start? Let's say you're a more traditional, brand. Where do you?
Well, that's absolutely the challenge, because the traditional brands have been disrupted to some extent by direct-to-consumer brands, who are born in the environment I'm describing and obviously come out at the market customer first. Yeah. And traditional brands are used to retail environments where the retailer has more information and interfaces with the customer more than the brand in reality, and that world has now changed. So as a brand, you've got to figure out how you get closer to your customers, what your direct channels are to customers, how you segment and break down your customer base to get a better understanding of those customers, how you use that understanding to get into product development and marketing and all the services that are aligned to that.
So do you think then, almost every brand now is going to have to start thinking about their direct-to-consumer strategy? And if that's the case, then the retailers must be quaking somewhat.
Well, I think not so much. I think the retailers are in a pretty good space. Right. I mean, it's surely a very competitive market at the moment because they have a natural customer interaction.
Right, I see, yeah.
So I'm not saying that all brands are going to just sell direct to consumers going forwards. That's probably not going to be the case. But you have to have that granular understanding to be able to connect accurately and correctly with consumers. If you think about it, you are competing with the Amazons of this world or the direct to consumer businesses who have a granular understanding of people, and they can react to that and respond to that as every day goes by. And if you're a traditional brand and you haven't got that, you're going to get disrupted.
So I guess that's where you see, I don't know if you're Gillette and all of a sudden up crops Dollar Shave Club or Harry's, and now they have this, although I keep seeing Harry's turn up in retail outlets now, so it's almost gone the other way. So
absolutely.
But I guess that's where I guess that's why Unilever goes and buys somebody like Dollar Shave.
Yeah, and let's not forget the Unilevers and Procter & Gambles of this world, they're very smart businesses.
Yeah.
And they're not about to sit back and get disrupted. No. So I think part of it is obviously them maybe even purchasing some of those startup businesses, as you've seen with Unilever. But a big part of it is them understanding how their scale helps them operate, because they've got what a startup direct-to-consumer brand hasn't got, which is the scale of their operations worldwide. And every direct-to-consumer brand wants that. So there is actually a natural combination of those two businesses. Ultimately, though, I think for those bigger businesses, those bigger brand owners, you're going to see them having a very clear direct-to-consumer strategy as well as a very clear retail strategy. And the information and the insight that they have from their customers will be just as useful in the direct channels as it is in the retail channels.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
And so, where do you think that? So, where do you think retail is going to go? So, Amazon obviously is the big, has been a sort of behemoth for some time, and clearly, there's, people aren't having to guess what where Amazon are going to be. But where do you think the retailers are going to end up ultimately?
Well, that's a big question.
Yeah, so you can answer that for me.
And that'd be great. And then we'll all retire happily. Let's not forget that Walmart are pretty big, and Tesco are pretty big, and Sainsbury's are pretty big, and pretty smart. So I think they're very quickly adapting to this environment.
Do you think so? Do you think then we're going to head like the sort of mid-level retailers? Do you think there's going to be? How do you think that's going to all pan out as we get? Are we going to end up with sort of direct to consumer and then some massive sort of retail?
No, because as we've seen already in this environment, consumers don't just want an online experience. They want a broader experience of a brand and a retail operation. In fact, they don't really separate necessarily brand and retail like that. They have an experience around brands and places they like to go. And that's what the smart retailers are doing. If you look at Marks and Spencer and how they've redeveloped their food offering now, the retail store is a wonderful experience, and they're rolling those out, and it's informed by what they're learning in the online channels. It's informed by the fact they know what a customer wants. A customer wants to be able to the convenience of an online or click and collect, and wants the enjoyment of shopping in a magnificent food retail environment. So it's that combination that is really powerful.
And then how do you think about sort of this about brand? So if you take say 5 years ago, let's say data was the thing, and so obviously we've got all these tools now to be very specific about how we can target people with ads, retargeting, almost to the point of scariness, let's say. And brand almost took like a back seat for a period of time. And I mean, I'm sort of seeing the brand is becoming, is re-entering the rhetoric, so to speak. And what's your sort of sense around that?
Yeah, look, you're spot on. That obsession, data, well, let's stop calling it data. Customer insight is what we should be calling it. Understanding your customers, understanding your consumers and what they want. And there has been a failure, I would say, in a lot of the approach around data, because it became such a functional approach to marketing, and people don't buy brands at a functional level. In fact, most people don't understand why they buy a particular brand. There are deep set memories that are built over years that start to explain why people buy brands. It's not just the latest offer and click to buy. The whole industry, because of the obsession with data, which isn't a bad obsession, but the whole industry went down the kind of optimization route. They're trying to capture the customer at the bottom of the funnel, and it's led absolutely to a loss of creativity, a reliance on what I would call optimization, where data has been used to optimize, if you're a brand owner, to optimize to sales, and a failure to understand the deeper meaning and drivers behind brands. And that's now coming back, I would say, because I'm seeing a new level of understanding of what I've just described and a new level of creativity around how brands engage coming back.
I hear people talk about, you think about voice and how voice works. is at the moment, voice is a sort of bit of a, still I'd say somewhat gimmicky, sort of sits in the room. But you can see how increasingly that could become an interface through which we, purchase products. And if you say, hey Siri, order me a burger.
Yes.
They'll take whoever's paid the most to be at the top of the list of the sort of burger chain.
Yeah.
Whereas if you say, hey Siri, order me a Shake Shack.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? It's the brand that you're ordering rather than the burger. And I think that's a really, for me anyway, I find that's a super interesting way to think about it. Is that do you become sort of the thing that you order rather than the quality that sort of sits behind?
Yeah. Look. Brands exist for a reason. Brands exist to make our lives clearer. Brands exist because you trust them and you enjoy them, and you get a rational benefit, but you get an emotional benefit out of that. So this whole idea that people are going to suddenly forget all that and become the functional, like purchasing departments in their house, or are going to be duped by, it's crazy though, isn't it? It's like, people, that's what God bless them. That's what a lot of data, I'm from a science background. Lots of data people think like that, and it's not how real life is. So I'm less of one of those people that think that, because you can do voice and because people can have whatever deals they've got running in the background, that's going to kill a good brand. It's absolutely not. And you've got to remember, of course, that the Googles and the Amazons and the Walmarts of this world are dependent upon strong brands. They want strong brands. They can charge a higher margin for them. They make more profit on them. It's beneficial to them. So I think, when any new or newer voice has been around for a while. When any new technology comes in, the industry madness tends to say, oh, well, voice is going to kill written search, for example. Voice search. Why would you type something into a keyboard when you can do voice search? Well, guess what? People are going to carry on typing into keyboards. People still go to the cinema. They still listen to radio. They still even see posters, the first medium of all time. So the idea that one thing just kills another is a nonsense. What it is bringing to people and smart brands is convenience, new ways of engaging, new ways for the brand to show through what they do, understanding of the customer. Going back to your data question, what you found is a big customer backlash to being followed around the internet by brands. That does a lot of damage to a brand, I would say. If you've just bought a car and then the car manufacturer is telling you, why don't you buy a car 2 months later, what the brand is showing is an ignorance of the customer, to the point where the customer is going, why are you doing this? You're showing that you don't understand me, you're breaking your trust. The challenge is that often isn't measured. The damage that's done isn't measured. The bit that's measured is the click-through rate.
That's interesting.
So you only need 0.01 people to click on a car ad, and commercially their job is done. You've got to think about what the 99.9% does.
That's interesting. And then how do you see, so I know you wrote about this recently, but where does sort of creativity fit into this? Because again, you go back and 5 years ago, it was an iterative, iterating, optimizing towards conversion and all these sorts of things. Where does creativity sort of come into all this? Because that's, I almost feel like it's taken a back seat for a period of time.
Yes, it has.
And now, I have my own views, but I'm interested in yours in terms of.
Yes, I think from a lot of people in this space, it did take a back seat, and they have paid the price for the taking of the back seat, because the brands or their agency business or however they're engaging in this world has therefore become less relevant, because it is creativity that allows you to take a step change in how you're perceived. You need to make a creative breakthrough for you to be meaningful to people these days. And optimizing isn't the answer. Optimizing is great. It's fine for optimizing your sales channels and making things as tight and functionally operative as possible. But it doesn't ever give you a breakthrough. And often the power of AI or the power of machine learning can be overstated, I would say. Machine learning really is more about optimization. You still need the human brain to make that creative leap. I think people are now understanding this, and I'm seeing in the industry a return to yes, but how are we making the breakthrough? How are we deploying creativity? It's an absolute asset for a company.
Yeah, I think that. I mean, I've spoken about this before, but AI, machine learning, they're great at sort of tasks that are essentially repetitive, or optimization is a great one, because where they get stuck is when you have to put two completely non-related ideas together, which most creativity is being able to connect one completely abstract idea with another to create a new idea.
Now, the reason why a lot of this has happened is that there is a tendency and a drive, I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but a drive towards automation. Because what you're finding now is that brand owners or retailers or agencies have so many channels to deal with, so much stuff to create, that they're seeking ways of doing that. And one of the answers has been automation. So if you are running a performance marketing campaign, and basically you're optimizing as to the cost per click or the cost per sale, whatever your cost per whatever, you're doing that with data science in some form or other, or machine learning rather, in some form or other. And the machine often optimizes the content as well as optimizing the customer. Now, in all of those processes, what they do is refine content more and more to get a better click-through rate, but they don't make that creative leap, ever. And I think that machines making the creative leap is some way off.
Me too.
Really.
Let me ask you then another question. So another sort of trend that I'm seeing is the so-called demise of the CMO being replaced by sort of chief growth officers, I think.
Chief revenue officers are a popular one.
What's your take on that as a is it just sort of labeling, or?
What a good question. I think it varies according to the company, really, and what that company feels is important to itself. And some have chosen to relabel, to try and restate the position of the CMO. I mean, there is no doubt in my mind, and the statistic shows this to be true, that CMOs are not taken as seriously, obviously, maybe it shouldn't be obvious, as the financial director, or the operations director. And that's I think a real problem. So if you're a customer, if you're a business and you're saying I have to become customer centric, you would have thought the CMO would have something to say about that. She might have a good contribution to bring to the company. And that is still a challenge, I think, for companies. Part of it is because the whole marketing agency world is obsessed with kind of reinventing, which in some ways is a good thing, because obviously it's about finding new ways and that creativity we talked about. But there really isn't necessarily a kind of body of work that says this is how marketing gets done. If you're a financial director, there's a body of work that says this is how you, this is the base. This is the gap standards or whatever those things are. In marketing, there's less of that, so it tends to get taken less seriously. But never more has there been a need for customer representation in the boardroom, because that's what's happening to the environment. And never more has there been a need for the individual that does that, the CMO, or whatever you want to call them. Today, I think the really effective CEOs are customer first, rather than operations first. And when you look at the direct-to-consumer businesses that a lot of the traditional businesses are learning off, you find that those businesses, they start with the customer problem. There's too much hassle in booking this. I can't get the best price for that. That's where they start, as opposed to starting in an incumbent business, going, I've got problems with my Tesco relationship. How am I going to sort that out? It's a different mindset.
I think there's something in that, and that idea that if you think, if you can build, you can get so close to a customer now through all sorts of routes and tools, that if, whether you're a CMO, CDO, CEO, whatever it is, if you understand how that base works, that's your platform, that's your launch platform. Right. So the moment you decide, okay, we want to bring a new product out, actually the first person you can turn to is your CMO, and you can sort of say, okay, there's 250,000 customers that we've got.
Absolutely right.
what do we need to bring to
Yeah.
market, so to speak?
And so there is a new CMO emerging. Well, a new CMO's around. I mean, we had digital for as long as I can remember, and I'm quite old. But this whole area, the CMO, the development of the CMO role, it starts to become quite close to the CTO or whoever is overseeing, if you like, whatever platform is being used to understand the customer. It just needs to get used in the right way, because there's one part of this which is, have I put the customer at the centre of my business, and do I have a good understanding of the customer journey, or whatever you want to call it? Do I have a single view of the customer? Often is the way these things are described. So you could have that, and then the second bit is, right, how do I use that knowledge to genuinely have this business progress? It's that piece that I think has been a bit slower. There's been a lot of work around customer journeys, getting platforms, the MarTech platforms now are pretty good. There's been a load of work around that. It's then how do you use that platform to make the creative leaps, to make those decisions that we're talking about, rather than just optimize, which is where everybody seems to be.
And so where, sort of looking ahead, what do you think the landscape's going to look like, especially on the sort of marketing ad agency type world? What do you think that's going to look like in 5, 10-ish years? Is it going to still be these, 6 major groups?
Yeah.
And then sort of my follow-up question to that would then be, and then, as a someone working within a brand, how should I be thinking about what that, that landscape, if it is changing?
Yeah, well, it for sure is changing. That's self-evident. A lot of it's changing because of some of the platform type businesses that we've described. In fact, there's been a lot of talk, obviously, about the demise of the agency. I think that's nonsense. Clients and brand owners, they need an objective point of view. They need to do some of the stuff I've just talked about. And in reality, the platform businesses aren't the places you're going to go for those creative leaps. In fact, it's not what they do, and I'm not sure they even want to do it. It's not their business. They're tech businesses. Now, so fundamentally, what it's going to mean in 3 to 5 years, or in fact, I think it's really happening now, is that there'll be a strong establishment of platform businesses, which are tools to doing what I've described. And that's all, they're great, but that's what they are. They're the MarTech tools. They are by no means finished, as it stands at the moment. They're not complete products yet, they're still being built. So even the likes of Adobe and Salesforce, incredible companies though they are still building these platforms and getting the joins correct themselves, and they're building on these platforms, but they are a tool. They're part of the answer, they're not the answer. So that whole area is getting established. I think it's really challenging for anybody else to break into that. So that the big 6 holding companies are making choices around, are they a platform business, are they a creative business, are they whatever. I think it's difficult for one of those holding companies to be a platform business. The platform businesses are financed differently. They work on different development cycles. They're enormous. It's just going to, really? Yeah. You're going to break into that, are you? Well, God bless you, and good luck. So I think that platform piece will get established. And then it's about what's the service layer, if you will, the layer that sits on top of that says, I can use this platform, I am Sainsbury's or I am Gillette, and I can use this platform to really give me a competitive advantage. And that's where a lot of the smart stuff now needs to happen. How do you build technology on top of those platforms for your own customer? How do you bring creativity and content to that platform? And those are the sorts of jobs that are being done. So there's a new emergent layer of agencies that understand that and are building on that rather than trying to compete with the platforms. They're kind of working with the platforms to develop better work. I think that's a really exciting space, and it's a big space and an important one.
So as a brand, then, if I sort of take your own words, if I'm a brand owner or someone working with a brand, really what I should be looking at is, okay, who's emerging that's on sort of building on top of these platforms, going to help me sort of leverage them.
Yeah, I think what CMOs and CEOs and brand owners generally are now looking for is, okay, I've got this customer understanding. Who do I need to surround myself with to be really competitive, to do some really brilliant work for those customers? And I think gone are the days when it is, right, call the agency, the old ad agency model, and expect them to do this all. Maybe I need to do media separately because that's a bit of a pain and it seems to be involved a lot of money and it's a bit of a dark art, so I'll do that. But I'll appoint those two and then let them get on with it. I think those days are long since. I mean, they're going fast. And it's not even credible, I think, as an agency to say, yeah, we understand every single channel, every single usage of it, et cetera, et cetera. It just doesn't work. And then a lot of the agencies, a lot of the traditional agencies, there's some really good, smart people in those agencies, but they are also themselves, they've been built on an incumbent model. Their cost base is challenging, some of the infrastructures are challenging for them to be agile enough to operate in the space I'm describing. And when you look at some of the most sophisticated marketeers, it's really interesting to see what they're doing. So the Procter & Gamble's and Unilevers of this world, if you look at Procter & Gamble, Mark Pritchard, the CMO, global CMO, Procter & Gamble, a very smart gentleman, is talking about how they are building an ecosystem. I hate the word, but you know what I mean. A group, an ecosystem of creativity around their business to be able to operate in the world I'm talking about. And that means they're looking for creativity from all sorts of sources that can make the creative leaps that I'm describing about. Sports specialists, sports marketing businesses, if you will, film businesses, publishers, ad agencies, independent startups, to supply, if you will, the creativity and content that can fill their platform. And I think that's really interesting. And you're looking at the big changes coming up now, and when you look at where all the energy is around, you know, it should be no surprise to anybody that television/video, whatever you want to call it, moving imagery with sound, right? Right. This stuff is really powerful. And so they're trying to find ways of engaging with that and building an ecosystem that can provide that for them. So I think it's really interesting now that if you look at some of the television environments where you know, linear TV is shrinking. It is. It's really powerful at the moment, but to a consumer, TV is TV. I mean, I've never heard any of my friends who aren't in this business go, "Shall we watch linear tonight, or shall we get that stream stuff?" They say, "Do you want to watch, you know, The Crown? Yes or no?" I don't care where I get it from. And with the streaming services that are developing, that's going to change the whole approach to video, because as everybody knows, Netflix don't take advertising. Sure as hell they're going to need financing. So they'll have to engage in brands and marketing somehow, as I think they are doing anyway. So they'll be looking at new ways of operating with video in that environment. So I think the call for creativity is not going to go away, it's going to go up. The need to be able to engage and deliver in the video space if you're a marketer is kind of crucial. And the deliveries, the platforms for this will be varied. That makes sense.
Totally. Well, fantastic place to end. So, thank you very much for spending the time with us. And
absolute pleasure.
We'll get you back in again for round 2, maybe.
Anytime, Fergus.
Great.
Anytime.
Cheers.
See you.
So that's a wrap on this episode of Imminent Marketing. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please don't forget to subscribe or share the podcast. And we look forward to seeing you again next time on Imminent Marketing.